Sometimes I still have nightmares of things that had happened.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're examining our picks for the most shocking cases of evil biological and adoptive parents who isolated and locked up their own children.
It was life-changing. I've never seen anything like it.
Charles Bothell IV and Monique Dillard Bothell. In 2014, Charles Bothell V was living with his father, Charles Bothell IV, and stepmother, Monique Dillard Bothell, in Detroit, Michigan, when his parents reported him missing.
Those 11 days were pretty troubling for everyone here in Metro Detroit and everyone across the country as this story captured national headlines.
For 11 days, the country was gripped by the story, resulting in the dad being interviewed live on Nancy Grace. However, during this discussion, the host dropped the news that his son had been found alive.
How could your son be alive in your basement?
I have no idea.
Young Charles, with signs of trauma, was discovered in the family's basement. In 2015, Bothell IV and Dillard Bothell were arrested and charged. In 2016, as part of a deal to avoid more serious charges, Bothell IV pleaded guilty to lesser crimes, receiving 18 months of probation and losing custody of Charles.
Now, Smith said that Bothell was worn down, he was weary, and that had a lot to do with why he took the plea deal in this case.
Dillard Bothell also accepted a plea, but the details were kept secret. Louise Monet. Born into a wealthy family, Blanche Monnier was a socialite in Poitiers, France. In 1876, aged 27, she told her mother Louise that she planned to marry Victor Calmiel. However, Louise hated this idea, so she locked her daughter in the attic of the family home. In 1901, the police received an anonymous letter that someone was imprisoned in the Monnier home. When they arrived, they were greeted with a terrible sight. Blanche, now aged 52, had lived in an impoverished state for 25 years, resulting in her weighing only around 55 pounds. 15 days after her arrest, Louise died. Blanche's brother Marcel was convicted for her imprisonment, but it was later overturned. Blanche struggled for the rest of her life, passing away in 1913. Benjamin and Christina Cotton. In 2022, the authorities arrived at the Cotton household in Red Wing, Minnesota after reports of their 4 children being in danger.
An anonymous tip led investigators to this blue one-story home on Skyline Drive in Red Wing last summer, and no one imagined what they would find.
When they asked Christina about the allegations, she showed the officials the cages the kids were locked inside, which she claimed was done for their safety. However, the investigation found this wasn't true, as the couple subjected the children to physical punishment. Christina also claimed this only happened at night, despite the officials being there in the morning and the investigation finding the kids had been locked up for at least 13 hours.
There says there were no obvious signs of distress, not at school, not in the neighborhood.
In 2024, as part of a plea deal, Benjamin and Christina pleaded guilty to their crimes. They both received 4 years in jail. Clark Wiley. In 1970, after years of mistreatment, with Wiley out of the house, his wife met with a social worker to get disability benefits, taking her daughter Jeannie with her.
The girl reportedly was uttering infantile noises and still wearing diapers when a social worker discovered the case 2 weeks ago.
However, when the worker saw the severely malnourished teenager, the authorities were called. Wiley had controlled the family, isolated them, and attacked them whenever they made noise. He'd locked Jeannie up in a room, even strapping her to furniture for years.
Completely restrained, she was forced to sit alone day after day and often through the night. She had little to look at and no one to talk to.
As such, her socialization skills were severely lacking, leaving her in a near-feral state. Rather than face punishment, Wiley took his own life. Jeannie was heavily studied by researchers, causing controversy as she was placed in many foster homes.
In the fall of '74, NIMH stopped funding the Genie project, citing a failure to collect data in a scientifically meaningful way.
In 2016, it was reported she was still in state care. Jurgen Bart's adoptive mother. After his mother died, Bart was taken in by a couple in Velbert, Germany, later being formally adopted in 1954. However, his childhood was terrible. In his early childhood, Bart was imprisoned by his adoptive mother in a dark basement. As well as isolating him, she was obsessed with cleanliness, resulting in her bathing him well into his teens. When Bart was in his mid-teens, he began taking the lives of boys. In 1966, his fifth victim escaped and alerted the police. In 1967, Bart was sentenced to life imprisonment, which was later changed to 10 years of juvenile detention followed by treatment in a psychiatric hospital. To control his violent urges, Bart requested castration. However, a complication from the anesthetic cost him his life in 1976. Clara Mauerova. When a man in Kuzim, Czechia installed a baby monitor to watch his daughter, he was in for a shock. The device picked up a signal from his neighbor Mauerova that depicted the shocking state of her children. The young brothers were kept locked up and sustained terrible treatment. Reportedly, it was due to a cult that their mother was involved in. However, shortly after the authorities arrived, Barbara Shkolova, who was involved, had vanished. It soon emerged that the 33-year-old was in Norway pretending to be a 13-year-old at school. She had escaped there to avoid arrest, but was eventually discovered and brought back. In 2008, Mauerova was sentenced to 9 years, as another 5 members were also jailed. Marcus Wesson. After leaving the military, Wesson soon descended into an authoritative monster.
With each passing minute, the story darkens.
He married one woman and then her teenage daughter Elizabeth. The two had 10 children together. Wesson was controlling, believing God was talking to him. So, he homeschooled the children with his twisted version of Christianity, subjecting them to horrible treatment as he stopped Elizabeth from raising them.
The lifestyle that was occurring in that household, where Marcus Wesson convinced his family that he was God, that Jesus was a vampire.
Her own sister even left 7 children with them, not knowing the circumstances. In 2004, after Wesson planned to move to another house, extended family and police approached the Fresno, California property and demanded the kids. However, when Wesson went back into the house, he murdered 9 relatives inside. He soon gave himself up. In 2005, Wesson was sentenced to death.
Today, Marcus Wesson, who is now 77 years old, is continuing to serve his death sentence at San Quentin Rehabilitation Center after being convicted in 2005.
Jeannie K. Whitefeather and Donald Lance. In 2023, the police arrived at a farm in Sissonville, West Virginia, after someone called with concerns over child welfare.
It's a disturbing discovery, deputies say they made Monday night in the Sissonville area of Kanawha County.
The property belonged to white couple Whitefeather and Lance, who had adopted 5 black children. When the cops arrived, they found 2 of the kids locked in a shed, which the couple had named the Teenage Clubhouse, without water or adequate care. Another was found imprisoned in the loft.
Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather arrived back at the home and were arrested on felony child neglect charges.
All of the kids had been forced to work on the property, with punishment being a regular occurrence. In 2025, Whitefeather and Lance were found guilty of several charges, including human trafficking and child neglect. Whitefeather was sentenced to 215 years, and Lance received 160 years.
This was the first time in state history that human trafficking charges were ever brought on the state level.
David and Louise Turpin. In 2018, Jordan Turpin escaped from her parents' house in Paris, California, and alerted the authorities about what had been going on.
What police found behind this closed door is beyond comprehension.
When the cops arrived, they found signs of mistreatment and neglect on the 13 children, including finding one child shackled to a bed and signs of recent restraints on others. David and Louise would let the kids out occasionally, especially when trips to Disneyland were involved, yet the majority of the time, they were isolated. The duo hid their dark parenting from relatives with happy posts on social media. In 2019, after pleading guilty to 14 charges, they were sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years, which they are unlikely to get.
And today, for the first time since their arrest, some of their children were in the courtroom to address their parents. They expressed their forgiveness.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Josef Fritzl. In 2008, after he brought in a boy with kidney failure, Fritzl's story on where the child's mother was made the hospital staff suspicious. A week later, when he brought Elizabeth, the hospital called the police, who arrested them.
What Elizabeth Fritzl revealed was that her father, Josef, had kept her locked in a cellar for 24 years.
Then, Elizabeth's tale came to light. She was Fritzl's daughter and had been held captive in the basement of his house in Amstetten, Austria since 1984. He then lied to everyone, claiming she had run away and joined a cult.
He was a cunning, meticulous man who planned his crime years in advance.
All the while, he subjected her to horrible treatment, fathering 7 children. Fritzl took some of them to live upstairs with his wife, convincing her Elisabeth had left the kids with them. In 2009, after changing his plea to guilty following Elisabeth's testimony, Fritzl was sentenced to life imprisonment.
He potentially could be released from prison more quickly than he releases his daughter from this hellish downstairs.
Are there any other cases that we missed involving evil parents imprisoning their children? Let us know in the comments.
Today's plea deal leaves him on probation for 18 months with no contact with the young Charlie until after that's over.